Today, we're going to be talking about cultivating pore sequences. My name is Michael Chabe. I am a senior AEC technical specialist here at ATG USA. We're going to be covering how to create pore sequences with a CTC tool called Fab Sheets. Now, the description is Revit does not natively have an easy one-stop solution for creating fabrication sheets. And specifically in this scenario, you can use this tool for multiple cases, but specifically for the scenario that we're going to be going over in this webinar, it's going to be around pore sequences. Another colleague of mine did another use case for this, more architecturally based. This one's going to be more structurally based towards pore sequences. And today we're going to be covering the CTC tool called Fab Sheets, and we will create and automate this process. We'll be creating colored sequence pores, and we're going to create sheets with views associated to those specific pore sequences as we go along and talk about it. And again, housekeeping rules. I do love engagement from everyone listening in on the webinar, so feel free to use the chat or the Q&A. If you are watching this as a recording, feel free to use the Q&A section, well, not Q&A section, but comment section on YouTube, or feel free to email us if you have any other questions as we go along through it. Now, our learning objectives today are going to be creating pore sequences or how to create pore sequences. We're going to code sequences by color and create a color key. We're also going to automatically create sheets specific to your pore sequences. Now, I'm going to ask a couple questions when we go into Revit. I do not believe in death by PowerPoint, so will be the end of my PowerPoint. We'll be going into a live demo. So feel free to ask questions. I will again ask a couple questions to see our attendees list if we know specific ways to create parts. That's how I split up this floor section here. And let's hop into Revit and go over how we can create pore sequences utilizing the Fab Sheets. So I'll go right into Revit here. So I have a project open. The only thing I've done so far for this specific project is I'm going to be creating a pore sequence for my first level floor. Now, I divided this into parts. Now, I kind of want to ask the audience, do we know how to divide something into parts? Feel free to use the chat or the Q&A. Give a couple seconds to see if I get any replies. Don't be afraid to use the chat or the Q&A area. Do we understand in Revit how we can natively divide things into parts? Would be my question. Yes, Ralph does. Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Or I guess the question would be, does anyone not know? So then we can show it as well as we run along through it. All right, I'll play the devil advocate here. I don't know how to do it. Harold, you raised your hand. I'm guessing that is either you know or don't know. I'll just say we don't know. So I'm going to go into a plan. I already did the first one because that's what I'm going to divide into a specific pore sequence, right? The second one doesn't have that divided. It's just a singular floor here. It is a 3-inch lightweight concrete on 2-inch metal deck. Now, since I'm doing my pore sequence, instead of doing it by floor by floor by floor, we're saying that this pore sequence on the specific day that we're doing this is going to be 3 parts in a pore sequence for that floor. So I have now day 2, we're going to do level 2, and we're going to pour this into 3 separate parts as well. So I want to split up that so then we can have day 2 on here as well. Now I'm going to select the floor. Now natively in Revit, you have the ability to divide things into parts. This can be for paneling, for precast panels, or even, I guess still be precast, you're casting on site and then lifting tilt panels. But I'm going to be going into here and creating what we call parts. So you go into the create panel. So I've selected my elements. This can still be done from the modify, create. So modify tab under the create panel. You have divide parts. Now I'm going to select which element because I didn't select the element first, then do the divide parts, I am selecting the command parts, and then I'm going to select the element that I'm going to divide and hit enter. Now it's saying, great, Michael, what do you want to do? You have some options here. I'm going to divide into parts. Now I need to split this into specific parts. So I said divide it into parts. Great. Now what? I need to sketch which parts I'm going to have. So I'm just going to use this grid line here, this grid line here. I'm going past the pour sequence area just because I'm saying from here to here, this is where I want this to divide from this area, this section into here, this section into here, and then I'm going to hit the check. Hit check again, and now I have my divided floor. It is a singular floor, but it is seen as parts. And within a specific view, you also have to show parts. So this defaults to showing parts. Now this does have to allow you to make sure when you now create views to show parts, because otherwise you won't see it. That's over here in the view properties. Usually it says show original. And then from there, all I'm gonna have is my floor specific for it, right? So it's not parts. And then I can go into here and say, hey, you know what? I want to see parts. This is going to play into effect when we're actually doing the pour sequences. If you're doing it floor by floor by floor, most default views have show original. So you want to create view templates. And I know I'm jumping ahead and you're probably like, Michael, what are you talking about? We'll go into here and talk about it when we see the CTC tool of Fab Sheets. But let's talk about the CTC tools altogether if we don't know anything or too much about the CTC tools. CTC tools, there's the project suite. The lighter color icons in the project suite are free tools. The darker color icons are paid for tools. These can be dragged out. They're their own tab. I can dock them back if I wanted to. The specific tool we're going to be talking about today is Fab Sheets. So I'm going to select Fab Sheets here. And we're going to be creating pour sequences specific to this. Now, let's talk about the specific tabs within Fab Sheets. Now, I've already gone through and selected which floors I wanted to separate to specific parts, but now we need to start creating this color coding and selection for specific pours. But before we do that, we need to set up some settings on how it's going to work, like the sequence parameter. So how this specific tool works, it's assigning a value to a parameter. Now, if you don't have a parameter available, which is just your project parameters, you can create one. It's going to default to a sequence. You can rename it if you wanted to. Then it's going to say, how do you want to sequence and increment format? What's the format going to be for it? Is there going to be any separator? Now, as you use this tool, it's going to be more beneficial for you when we go to the view creation side to automatically have view templates already created. This is going to be the area here that you assign those view templates that you're going to be utilizing, like the 3D Fab Sheets or my view template properties for the template itself of plan views. I'm going to go through and say, great, I'm going to use my foundation Fab Sheets here for my plan views. What about elevations? Do you have any elevations? I'm not going to create any elevations specific to this, but you can. And you can also have the view template associated to it already. It's going to help you down the way to already have your view associated the way you want it to look. And this is just going to take some time figuring out which view templates work best, ironing out which visibility things are going to be representative of in those areas. And then section, I do have a section. So I have my structural section Fab view template. Now, I don't prefer to have a view template scale assigned to these view templates because I want to be able to modify which view scale I can change these to quickly. So again, in my view templates, they are not already assigned a view scale. They are default to let me allow to change them here. Because if it is, it'll overwrite what this is. That's just preferred method. Now, if you have any material takeoffs, I don't. But if you do, you can have it already create a material takeoff schedule because over here in view creation, you can have it create a schedule. And we will reflect back to that as well. What about sequence graphics? So if you want any graphic overrides, now this is more of just cut patterns, so projections, it's not doing a fill. So what pattern do you want to have? You have the ability to go through and select a specific one if you wanted to. It's going to already give you a color coding, but this is more of a graphics of a 2D plan or line weight types that you're going to use for those. And these are all the ones that you have for those specific proceeding or increment, meaning what was before, what is the current in that specific view that you're in, and what is going to be the following after that. So you can do overrides of your increments of your pours saying, hey, I'm looking at the current pour. This is what was before it. You can kind of refer to it as phases almost in that sense to kind of wrap your brain around it. What was the preceding or demo phase? You're in the current phase. This one was demoed, and what you're seeing in the current phase is the demoed. That's how it's going to look, or what's going to be going and taking place before that. Like maybe I don't want to see the coming to phase of my pours. So these are your increment values and how you can assign specific graphic overrides if you wanted to. You can take the time to set this all up and hit save as, and then you can hit load as well once you've completed so that you can reload it and you don't have to worry about going back. And when you hit load, you get to select the file type for it. This can be saved on your network. So let's say you taking the time, you're more of the BIM manager role, you've taken the time to set this all up, how you want things to look. You can easily just export it as a save as, and then have other people go and just hit load so they can just go and run this. Again, you've taken that upfront time of going through and itemizing how everything should look, and you can reload it. So this is the settings button. Does anyone have any questions about the settings button before I move on to the sequence management? Questions? All right, no questions. So let's move forward. Again, if you're watching this as a recording, feel free to use the comment area on YouTube. We'll get back to you on those, or feel free to email us. Now we're going to go to sequence management. This is how we add sequences to our selection. So I'm going to add an overall sequences. Well, I'm going to add, multiple overall sequences like day 1, day 2. I'm going to have day 3, but we didn't do the 3rd floor. I'm just going to have it there just to show. So now I have my overall sequences. Okay, so within that day, am I going to add specific increments of the day that I'm going to pour different pours? So I'm going to add increments here. My first increment is going to be pour 1. My second one's going to be pour 2. My third one is going to be pour 3. Because remember, I split those floors into 3 different parts that I'm selecting from. And let me back check real quick, or refer back to, I created this sequence. It may not default, by the way, to parts. So, oops, great. You may want to go into manage project parameters, because when if you're not able to select the different parts, that's because the sequence one parameter is not associated to the correct category. It will by default go to columns, floors, ramps, roofs. I think I had to select a couple extra, but it's always good to come in here and check. I clicked parts, so now I can select the parts when I'm going to be assigning those specific pours. So just be aware you may have to go back to those and select them. So let me go back to the CTC tool here, Fab Sheets. Great. So now from here, I'm going to go back to my pours and I want to assign some colors to them. So I'm going to click my sequence value and I'm going to assign random colors, and it's going to assign random colors to the pours. Now you can assign a specific color value just by selecting the pour and saying assign a color. I'm just going to keep going through until I find one that looks okay to me. That one looks good. Okay, so I can reassign a color, remove colors. Let me actually add some more increments to day 2. So I'm going to do pour 1, pour 2, pour 3, hit OK. Reassign colors here, boom, boom. There we go, that looks good. There's red here too. I don't want to have red. It's already going to be red. Let me do magenta. Looks good. Okay. Now what are you going to do, right? So I can edit if I wanted to. I can remove any if I needed to. Now, am I going to create a selection for these specific ones? So my sequence views, right? So I have my sequences, or my increment for my different increments. I'm going to do both, but I also need to assign some of these to a different area. So if we remember my current view, I'm in view, a 2D view. I should probably go to a 3D view here That's going to show everything so I can select those views. Now, I've already created a view called Pour Sequences that has a section in it, a section box more specifically. So it's easier for me to select some of the elements in their specific sequences as we go along. So I'm going to go back to my Fab Sheets here. I'm going to select which one I'm going to grab, such as the Pour 1 or the Pour 2. I'm going to do Pour 1 first. I'm going to assign it to an element. So down here, I get to assign the element of what it is. It tells me, am I going to do it? I could do a batch assignment mode, but I'm just going to do one individual one. So I'm going to do Pour 1. It's going to be right here on floor 1. And then I need to go over here and hit finish. Now this is a little hidden one. Some of the CTC tools have this same thing. You select it and you're wondering, okay, well, what do I do next? Look in your dynamic options bar. It's telling you over here to say finish. Great. I'm going to do Pour 2. It's going to be this one, finish. I'm going to do Pour 3. It's going to be this one over here, finish. Then I'm going to do Pour 1 for day 2, finish. I'm going to do Pour 2 for day 2 here, hit finish. Pour 3, assign, and finish. Now your question may be, well, hey, Mike, why aren't those already showing up color coordination? That's because what this tool natively does is creates a view filter, which needs to be assigned to the view, which it isn't assigned to this view yet because we're just creating these pour sequences to fill in these view filters that are assigned to a specific value. So from here, it's saying that, and I'm going to go through and create and update my selection here. So it's going to create an update. So it would update if I re-update it, but it's going to create because I'm going to create right now. So it's going to go through and create some views. So over here, I have my day Pour 1. I'm actually going to exit out of the Fab Sheets. I'm going to quickly modify this view because I didn't have a view template already associated to it. And then I'm going to show parts because again, this view didn't have parts, but if you had a view template already associated to it down here, you would already see those parts being shown. And again, I can come up here, say section box, get rid of all the top part. And here's my sequence for the day 1. As I can see here, I can go back to Pour 1 now. Hide some of these settings here, shaded, medium, show parts. Because remember the parts feature again, because I selected parts versus just it being a floor. Go down. And since these other sequences are within here, meaning the day, it's day 1, Pour 1, it actually hides my previous sequential items that have been selected. So I can see that they're not going to be in place, but I can see in highlighted here the location for that one. I'm going to go into Pour 2, change a little settings here, go into shaded, hidden, parts, apply, go back to my scope box here, and it has been applied. And again, just showing our pour sequences that we have. Now, another great feature as well in the Fab Sheets is creating a legend for those pour sequences. Now I can go to here and I can say, great, so I want to also create a color legend for day 1. It's going to go through and say, okay, well, what text do you want to use? What line style do you want to use for it? I'm going to use lines. It's going to create a legend for the views, hit OK. And it actually creates a drafting view. So if I go over to drafting view, if we remember, I didn't create any colored legends for the third one. So I'm going to go to my first day 1. And this is something I can use on a sheet now. It's giving me a fill, and it already has a text associated to what the color coding is for those specific items. Here's day 2. So I don't have to go through and create these. It just automatically created those specific to what they were. And again, if I go back into Fab Sheets here, if I need to update them, I can just re-hit update. So if I change the color of day 2, and I just wanted to go through and say, hey, you know what? Day 2 is going to be, let's assign orange maybe. They look a little close, but that's fine. I can hit update, hit OK, go back to my second day, and it's updated the color. So again, I don't have to go redo it. I can go back to my day 2 one. I didn't create the view for it yet, or modify the view for it. Go back to showing parts, and it will have updated in specific. If I go back to my Fab Sheets, go back to day 2 and hit now update for this one, it's going to update it. And again, if you had your association of your view template, you wouldn't have to go back and redo that. Let's go back to day 1 and let's talk about how we can create views onto a sheet automatically from doing the same feature that we were just doing. So I've already created my pour sequences. Great. Now I want to create some views associated to them. Now, the great thing about this is you can actually create scope boxes already assigned to those specific views. So it's only going to be showing that specific pour for that specific day. So I'm going to go in here and create scope boxes. Now, natively, Revit doesn't automatically allow you to have them assigned to whatever scoping value it is in terms of how large it is. But I'm going to create it because I am going to, meaning change the size for pour 3. It's giving me a scope box to that. I could have already done it for all of these, but for this example, I'm just going to show day 3 has a scope box assigned. Now I'm just need to change the size because it doesn't natively automatically change the size of that specific pour. So I'm going to go into here, go back into top, drag this over to here. And then now what I can do is create views for that specific pour. It's going to encompass the scope box, which is great. And again, these views that it's going to create over here are going to be assigned with these specific view templates that you've created. So now from here, I can say, great, I want to create for pour 3 a plan view or a structural plan view. I'm not going to do any elevations, but you have that ability to do an elevation as well. What about a cross section if I wanted to? So I'm going to create a section north, south, and east, west through that specific pour. I'm also going to create a sequence 3D view. So the sequence is going to be day 1. I don't want that. I want the increment of day 1, which is pour 3. If I wanted to create a materials takeoff, do you want to create a schedule for it? Do you want to create a sheet? Not yet. I'm going to create the views first. Then now I have the views associated to it, and I can create the sheet specific to it. I'm gonna hit create sheet. Now let's go over to the sheet here. I can go down to my sheets, and all of those views will be on that sheet specific to whatever pour I have. So I have the ability to go through, this is the longer section here. Here's my plan view for that specific pour. So I can go through and navigate how I want to structure these specific views. In the 3D view, I may want to reduce the size of this one specific to the longer cross section. But from here, this is that 3D view. I can reorient it if I needed to. That's that specific pour location. This is the other cross section that I had for it as well. And here is my schedule. Now, if I had taken the time to properly create a material schedule that had more data to it that I was going to be assigning from it, it would have updated this in a better scheduled manner than what it currently defaults to. This is just the default pour schedule that it is given when you're creating it. But it's created all those. And again, if I wanted to modify any of these, even this one from here, I can say, yes, I want to. So I can easily go through and modify this. Hey, it should only be from here to here. And I can go through and change how this will be represented of for that specific view. Or the scale, I guess the scale should have been something different. Go through and change the scale. Let's go back to my pour 1. And we will go back to my PowerPoint here. Thank you for joining me today. This is time to ask any questions you had about what we went over in terms of pour sequence management, and the view creation part was the ending that we went over. This was on creating pour sequences. And again, you can utilize this tool for many things. This was just specific to pour sequences. If you have any questions, feel free to ask now. If not, thank you. Remember to check out our YouTube channel or our LinkedIn to stay in the loop on all of the social media items that we post for future webinars or anything like that. Thanks, Ralph. Hope you have a good rest of your day and a happy holiday weekend. Thanks everyone for showing up today. Again, if you have any questions, you're on YouTube watching this video, feel free to leave them in the comment section or feel free to reach out to us.